How far back can you trace your ancestors? Well, one Eurasian family in Singapore has traced theirs across more than 10 generations to 1600 in England. Carme D'Souza meets the Shepherdsons, possibly the first Eurasians here to put their genealogy into a book.
It's more than just pages of family trees. It weaves a story of how the earliest Shepherdsons from Ramsgate, England, came to Malacca and how the family spread throughout Malaysia and Singapore. It also tells a story of the Straits settlements in the 1700s.
There was a lot of things we uncovered. The life at that time, the way they were living, and there were slaves.
Percival had started in the 1970s trying to trace the family through churches in Malaysia. But it was a chance meeting at a funeral that got the ball rolling.
That night, as we spoke, we also found a lot of our cousins did not know one another because we were a pretty big family. We decided that we had to do something about it.
That led to the first gathering in 1990, and there's been an annual one ever since.
I read about it in the newspapers, and there was a Shepherdson girl in my school, and I asked her about it. And she showed me their family magazine, and I saw my father-in-law's name there. So I was wondering how we could be connected.
Not until this year did all the pieces fall together, and it was the result of a search which took them to churches and even cemeteries across Malaysia. But the highlight was going back to the ancestral home in Ramsgate, Kent.
So the experience was knocking on the door and hoping that a distant Shepherdson relative would still be living there.
There wasn't, but the owner gave Kevin an old purchase order and the original plan of the house.
The Eurasians are a small community, and these Shepherdsons may well be family. That's because a few D'Souzas married Shepherdsons.
But so many of us, Eurasians who are mixed, really don't know enough about where our ancestors came from. So this is one little piece in the patchwork quilt that makes Singapore.
And this Sunday, Shepherdsons from across Malaysia and Singapore will be partying together, some for the first time. But this book is not the end. They've uncovered more archives, but they'll leave that to another Shepherdson to pick up.
It's a reunion like none other, with more than 200 family members in attendance. As Dominic Lowe finds out, it's also a chance for them to get acquainted with relatives they never knew they had.
There were warm embrace and laughter. Most were strangers meeting for the first time, but they're also related by blood. It's the first time the Shepherdsons have reunited the 5 main branches of their family tree.
Now the families were together in Malacca, and from Malacca they moved to different parts. And some of them came to Singapore, some went to Malacca, some went to Taiping, Perak and so forth. So that's how the whole family dispersed.
I was so happy to, come to know that my father has got so many relations.
I was very shocked because she could actually name my full name and my birth date. So it was very rare in that sense. So it was like, then you could actually tell what was my grandfather's name, my dad's name, and very thorough in that sense.
This idea has stirred up interest. Those who didn't have the name of Shepherdson, which I don't, but I have the blood, because my mother's a Shepherdson.
News of the reunion got other Shepherdsons interested as well.
I was most intrigued because Shepherdson is a very unusual name in England where I'm from. It's very rare, and I was very intrigued to find out more about how there were so many Shepherdsons in Singapore and Malaysia.
With more than 400 years of family history, the Shepherdsons have become a truly multiracial mix. Today there are 131 other family names that are linked with the Shepherdsons family. And what's a reunion without the family portrait? With a family portrait this big, it's a good idea to find the biggest wide-angle lens you can find. Before this gathering, most family contacts were lost through time. But staying in touch will be much easier these days. The Shepherdsons have set up their own website to keep track and in touch with each other.
A Singapore family is using the science of DNA testing to unravel the mysteries behind their ancestry. Although the Shepherdson family tree can be traced back to 16th century England, there are some unexplained gaps in the history. So are all Shepherdsons in Singapore related by blood? Dominic Lowe finds out.
These men say they are descendants of two Shepherdson brothers, Captains Robert and Matthew Shepherdson. Percival and Kevin trace their roots to Captain Matthew. Mike and Russell are from the Captain Robert lineage, but they can't say for sure if they're really the descendants and if all four are related by blood.
My grandmother told us of certain members of the family. She gave us some names which served as clues to our relationship between our family and the other Shepherdson families in this region. At first, there was no concrete evidence of a relationship.
What we've also done was to extract information from the wills of Shepherdson ancestors. And from the information in the wills, we were able to determine a relationship, although not with certainty.
Here's where DNA testing comes in to verify and lend credibility to their research once and for all. Swabs containing genetic material from both Shepherdson branches were sent to a lab in the US for analysis. About a month later, the moment of truth arrived, and the people responsible for the DNA analysis even flew in from Utah to deliver the results.
We were able to see nearly identical patterns on every one of them. In fact, 3 of the 4 have identical patterns, and 1 of the 4 only has one slight difference, which proves that this whole family is linked, and it proves what they thought was this genealogy, this pedigree that had these questions in it, is now proven positive, and they're able to establish that for sure.
So it's a wonderful feeling to find out that 15 years of research has now been proven to be correct and scientifically proven. So because when you share with people that you trace your family roots, people are wondering, how accurate is it?
The Shepherdsons aren't the only ones sharing their ancestry. Starting 2nd August, you can find out more about the genealogies of other Singapore families in an exhibition at the National Library.
How well do you know your family history? Some families here have traced their roots back to Singapore's early days, and their family heritage is now part of the genealogy exhibition opened today at the National Library. The first such exhibition here even traced descendants of historical royal families in the region. The families, like the Shepherdsons, have meticulously linked their family roots back to 16th century England. There's even information about the resources you can use to help start your own family tree. DNA testing, for example, has helped the Shepherdsons verify some of their research. They now hope to collect DNA samples from some 200 Singaporeans. It's to help expand a genetic and genealogical database of families around the world. And who knows, it might even enable other families to identify relatives right here in Singapore.